Today's episode has been brought to you by OfferingTree, and it is a very special episode where you get to meet the two co-founders, Eddie and Alex, and hear some behind the scenes of what it's been like to create a software for yoga teachers and studios, especially in these times, right around the time of the pandemic, right when many yoga teachers are moving online and trying to figure out how to integrate all kinds of tech in a user-friendly way. OfferingTree is an amazing company that cares about community, especially the yoga community. And this is why I'm thrilled that they're our new sponsor for the podcast. If you are a regular podcast listener, you probably noticed that OfferingTree is our sponsor as of this month. And that is why I'm really excited that you get a chance to get to know their company. I want you as a listener to get to know who is sponsoring the podcast. And I had some questions that I was super curious to ask Eddie and Alex of OfferingTree. I wanted to try and figure out what the secret sauce was that makes their company so special. This episode is also made possible thanks to the Yoga Teacher Conf that is happening in Denver, Colorado, April 22nd to the 24th, 2022. I'm going to be there teaching an all-day workshop with my good friend Amanda McKinney on the Friday, and then teaching yoga for pelvic health on Saturday. And in between, I am so excited that I get to talk with and hopefully hug some connected yoga teacher listeners. I'll only hug you if you say it's okay. I think I might even get to bring my microphone with me to do some interviews. So let me know if you're going to be there. Let me know if you're thinking about being there. Let's plan some time to get together. Join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. I was actually thinking today and talking with Allison about the conference, the person who organizes the conference, and just thinking, wow, this is really going to be something when we actually do get together in person. It's a bit like my brain can't even fathom that at this moment right now. And another really cool thing is that OfferingTree is collaborating with Yoga Teacher Conf. And I love it when amazing people and companies collaborate together to offer yoga teachers really good continuing education and further connection. And that is exactly what's happening. And so I think it's super cool that they're both sponsoring today's episode. So if you're new here, hello and welcome. This is the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a Canadian who's learning more about what it means to live on Indigenous land. I live up on Turtle Island on Anishinaabeg, Odawa, and Mississauga land. And all of my ancestors came to Canada as immigrants from Ireland, England, Scotland, and Germany, and they settled here. And I am learning along with you about what that means, what it means to have ancestors who came and settled when Indigenous people were really caring for the land in a really unique and special way. I'm also a mom of three, a yoga teacher, podcaster, and founder of Pelvic Health Professionals. And I've been sharing most weeks on the podcast lately a random fact about me. And today's is not one that I really wanted to share, but it popped into my brain this year as we were baking Christmas cookies here in our household and getting some molasses. I don't know what conversation Sean and I started to have, but all of a sudden this memory came back from when I was a kid. We had horses in the barn. I was talking about this last week on the podcast about horses, not the molasses story though. But all of a sudden this memory popped in of going into the barn, and my dad bought like a tub of molasses to mix with the horse feed. And I remember eating the molasses. And the adult in me now was like, ew, this is some like sticky substance in the barn with horses. Okay, so it feels like it's an embarrassing story, and it's one of those things, when you're just clipping along in life, and then you think back to different weird and wonderful things that your childhood contained. Do you have any weird or wonderful childhood stories? If you do, make sure to leave me a voice message. You can do that from the connectedyogateacher.com homepage. Look for the button. Okay, so this isn't a podcast about horses or molasses. This podcast was created for you, the yoga teacher, so that each and every week you can feel supported, so that we can bring you podcasts full of information and inspiration that will help you on the tougher days as you build this unique yoga business and share yoga in your community. And today's episode is all about a company that is really dedicated to helping yoga teachers build their yoga business and supporting them as they grow and serve yoga students online or in person. And that company is OfferingTree. If you're not sure what OfferingTree is, it's an all-in-one platform. So if you need a website, if you need scheduling, payment processing, email marketing, online video, course hosting, memberships, packages, and more, they offer all of this. They also have amazing free monthly educational webinars. And I would highly recommend getting on their email list so that you can get access to those. They get some amazing guests on talking about different helpful things, and you can join live, ask questions, and also have access to the replay when you're on their email list. And they're a company that has niched down to serve yoga teachers and other wellness professionals. So they are really listening when you have suggestions or ideas or things that you really need. They're listening to you as a yoga teacher. The sponsorship happened really organically because already I have been talking to yoga teachers for a long time about OfferingTree, back when they were only focused on websites and helping yoga teachers to create a website. Well, you know what happens then. Yoga teachers create a website, people start showing up, finding their offerings, and then yoga teachers started wanting to share online classes or pre-recorded classes. And so the company has really grown. You're going to hear that in today's episode. We get to talk with Arpin and Alex Haley, two of the co-founders of OfferingTree. So Eddie is the CEO of OfferingTree, and I think it's really important to note, and you'll hear it in today's chat, where Eddie is also doing lots of other things with the company. This is a small company, and so Eddie is not only the CEO, but also, answering customer support emails or really keeping a pulse on customer support. His background is in engineering. He has a passion for staying physically and mindfully fit. Alex, the other co-founder of OfferingTree that we talk with today, also teaches meditation retreats at meditation centers throughout the United States. His background is in law, business, and the wellness industry. So Alex knows firsthand the complexity and struggles of professionals within the health and wellness industry, particularly around the overwhelm of managing a business while being present for yoga students or clients. I'm really excited that you also will get to hear from Alex and Eddie the origin story, why they started this company in the first place, and how it's grown and changed into what it is now. So let's dive in and meet Alex and Eddie of OfferingTree. Hello and welcome, Alex and Eddie, to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
So I am super curious. Before you started OfferingTree, where were you both at? Did you know each other? What was the first thing that you can think of where you were like, we're going to make this thing? And did that start off sitting down for coffee together or not even knowing each other? Alex, do you want to tell us, what do you think was the first spark for you?
Sure. I'll tell my version and then I'll defer to Eddie on his version. So my version is Eddie and I actually knew each other years before we started working on OfferingTree, actually a connection through a mutual friend. So we had a long-standing connection and relationship, which was great because he's who popped into my mind as part of the origin story for OfferingTree. And the short version of it is I was working as a co-manager at a donation-based yoga studio. They tried to implement the kind of major software provider, MindBody Online, within their donation-based yoga studio. And it killed the vibe. I mean, teachers were staring at the tablet, trying to figure out how to get it work rather than having a conversation with students that were coming into the door. And the whole yoga studio had built its brand and its philosophy and its just way of operating on community connection. So this was a total mismatch. So the owners had enough courage to pull the plug and said, this isn't working after spending months of like researching and like implementing. And they said, no, we got to stop. So they pulled the plug. They turned to me and they said, well, you know some stuff about technology, like you fix this. And I was like, well, I know enough to be really dangerous. So let me call my good friend, Eddie. And so that's when I picked up the phone, and maybe I'll turn it over to Eddie at this point.
Yeah, Eddie, what was that conversation like when Alex gave you a call?
I was definitely trying to underpromise on that conversation. So he was like, can you design this platform for our studio? And I said, no way, there's no way that we can do something like that just for one yoga studio. It would be too expensive, take too long. But I said, well, maybe there's other yoga studios that have the same, issue. So we took it back to the drawing board and had a lot of conversations and did a lot of research. We interviewed a bunch of teachers and yoga studio managers. Through all of that, we came out with the first iteration of OfferingTree. And the focus for anyone who knows what OfferingTree is turned out to be much more on individual teachers versus the yoga studios. And it was an enlightening process because I didn't have a lot of knowledge about how yoga studios and yoga teachers operated and all of the pain points that they had. And this was pre-pandemic. So, mostly people were just hopping from class to class, trying to make a living. And through all of our conversations with yoga teachers, it just really became clear that people were hustling pretty hard to squeak by. And we thought we could make their lives a lot easier and kind of decrease the burnout with OfferingTree. And so that was sort of the main focus for the software.
And so where were you at that point? I mean, you can tell us physically where you were, but also I'm sure you were doing other things, other work.
Yeah, so I'm a computer developer by trade. So we were in Minneapolis, and I was working at a tech startup pretty close by to where Alex was living, and I was doing mobile development software. And so it was a great learning experience building OfferingTree because even though I'm a software developer and kind of, get things done in all different areas, it was really a good learning experience to do front end and back-end web development. So that was fun along the way. So I had a normal 9-to-5 software job. And then we picked up OfferingTree and worked on it nights and weekends. It was definitely a labor of love for a few years.
That's amazing. Alex, what were you doing at that time when Eddie was like, yeah, no?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, was one of the co-managers at this little local yoga studio. And my day job was teaching. So I'm more on the teacher side and knew all the pain points that Eddie was talking about firsthand from my own experience. So I was working at the University of Minnesota and was teaching classes. And then I was also teaching retreats and other things around the country. And just as Eddie said, it was a sort of nights and weekends labor of love project. And we knew that we were perfectly imperfect. And I still hold to that to this day. I'm still like, we are perfectly imperfect. We're always a work in progress. And I really like to remind myself that the origin story for OfferingTree is so connected to how we operate. I mean, it came about from this problem, this pain point where it had just stifled community at this local studio. And so I really feel how we've carried through the thread of community for what we do. We love talking to our customers. We love hearing feedback, whether that's positive, whether that's critical, whether that's kind of like, meh, you guys are meh. We love it all because that's part of the conversation and keeping the connection. And it feels like that's part of the spirit of our origin story. It's still alive today.
That's really amazing. I'm thinking of a couple of things. First is I think you have this secret ingredients to the two of you when, Alex, you understand the pain points and what it's like. You also understand education from working at the university. And then, Eddie, you have the tech know-how, which not a lot of people have, or as Alex said, some people have just enough to be dangerous. And that can be super frustrating for yoga teachers and yoga studios. And this is so fascinating. I didn't know this about you with regards to the community. I didn't really pick up on that in the last time that I heard this story. Like, I know that I heard the origin story, but this is really interesting because one thing that I see and feel is you expanding your community. Do you want to talk about, like, what are you doing to expand the community and how have you seen that happen, those connections?
So much of what we do is relationship based. I mean, I think you're spot on, and that resonates with me when I hear you reflect that. From the outset, we've been so relation based because we understand that so much of practice, life, and work is relational, and it's not always reflected in the services and the companies that you may, use on a daily basis. But to the best of our abilities, and again, as I said, perfectly imperfect, we try to really, really emphasize that relational component. And I think it matters on so many levels because then we are there with the user, the teacher, the studio. We think of our brand as like we're super successful if we're in the background and somebody is just making it and they're like, having whatever their definition of success is and they're realizing that. And we're sort of cheering them on from the background, providing all the support and things that they need. And we hear so many wonderful stories of teachers and studios coming back and saying, I couldn't have done this without that. And to us, that's the sort of magic of this relational approach. It's like, you're really good at this thing. We're really good at this thing. So we're way better together. And let's be explicit about that rather than like, oh, okay, you're a number. And yeah, okay, so let me look up your file number again. It's like we know people that contact us from Customer Smart, like, oh, hey, yep, last time, how's that going? We know you had that other issue. Did that resolve? So we try to, again, as best as we can, really carry that through. And I think it matters on another dimension, which is it then helps with the feeling, the sort of emotion, the affect of feeling overwhelmed and feeling, because for me anyways, I'll name it as such, there's no worse feeling than feeling like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders by myself. It's sort of like a burden shared is a burden halved. And that's sort of I think the ethos that, we try to bring within OfferingTree.
Yeah. And I'll just say to kind of piggyback on Alex's point of being relational is, we've really seen our community grow through having partnerships, like partnerships with you, Shannon. You've connected us with a lot of people who benefit from OfferingTree, and you've connected us with other people. And so, you are definitely part of the story. And we've grown our community through that way. Also, our users have been a really powerful component of growing the community as well. They've been spreading the word. And, I think creating that sense of community has helped us tremendously. And it's something that, was maybe a little bit surprising, but we're reflecting back on it. We're just really grateful for it. And, we really think that OfferingTree is something more than just something that we sort of control and manage. It's all of the users that use it have really molded it to be what it is. And it really helps us know where to go. And they're instrumental to our success in the future as well.
And there's one other thought, just as Eddie was speaking, that I've come to appreciate, and I don't always notice it, so I'll just share it. It's been interesting in this last year for sure. The relational thing also means that there's a long arc. It's like you're in it together for a long time. And so if I use our origin story of the yoga studio, when I called Eddie and he said, no, can't do that. Like, it's too expensive for one studio. So they didn't use us. But then fast forward to the pandemic, they did use us. So there's this full circle of where the relationship mattered, where it's like, it's not just like a one-time, this one thing, it's a transaction. It's no, we're committing to this long-term engagement. And I think so much, even, in the years that we've known you, Shannon, there's just this richness to the relationship, and it changes and morphs, and, people's roles shift and change, but we have this underlying commitment to be there for each other. And I think that's where the magic happens.
Well, I definitely noticed even in our first conversations together when the two of you said to me, like, how can we support the work that you're doing? And I was like, and that's that reciprocal connection. I'm super grateful for that. And also I have to say that I really appreciate that I can just tag Eddie. It's usually Eddie in our Facebook group. It'd be like, Eddie, someone has a question about OfferingTree. And I know that you have a really helpful Facebook group as well of your own. And that conversation is there, hey, I need some help with this thing, or one of our yoga teachers is struggling with their website. Can you help them with this? That really matters. Or are there any times along the way, like you said that this was evenings and weekends, was there a time in the business where you're like, oh my gosh, this seems like too big of a hurdle? Eddie, do you want to talk first about maybe there was a tech thing, or was there a point where you're like, I'm not getting enough sleep in this?
There were probably a few, but one that comes to mind was that we use a email service provider that sends out our emails. They take care of all the mail servers and all of that stuff. And there was an issue where they thought we were like a fraudulent account or something like that. And this was after we had been using them for more than a year. And for a few hours, our emails weren't working, which was a huge deal for our business because, we send confirmation emails and reminder emails for our clients so that their clients know when to come to class or know that they registered. And so that was a moment where I just felt totally hopeless and, reached out to support and just hoped that their support was good. And that was a moment that really helped me empathize with our users too, about how sometimes you feel like pretty reliant on something and you can feel pretty helpless when it's not working and you don't know what to do. But luckily we got it resolved fairly quickly. Although, I'm sure there was definitely some impacts, but it was just a moment where we were thinking, geez, if we just had more resources, maybe we could not be reliant on one system or another. And just wondering if we had enough time to really take this to the next level. But we got through it and everything's been pretty smooth. But that was one moment where I was pretty nervous.
I hear you on the tech stuff. And when something goes wrong, like I hate that moment when I look at my website and it's like, oh, it's down, or, oh, the logo has like moved somewhere completely different, or your emails don't go out, or you send the wrong email to everyone. We all have these tech things that happen. And I appreciate that you also have to deal with them. And I appreciate that OfferingTree is figuring it out for us. Alex, is there a moment where you were thinking, oh gosh, can we get through this?
Yeah, I'd echo Eddie's comment. There are probably many moments. The one that's coming to my mind right now, I think, is, we made a shift in our business model at one point because we needed to. I think we have very high aspirations, and I love the fact that as a company, we care. And there was a moment where we recognized, oh my goodness, like as a business, we're not going to make it if we don't change our business model. Like we had multiple people that were not connected with us being like, wait, what are you charging? Like you are charging like that? How are you surviving? And then we were like, oh, right. Like we are committed to this as nights and weekends, but if this thing is going to actually grow beyond us and continue to succeed and support more individuals, we can't use that original model. And that was hard because for me, it really got to that relational component. It's like, no, but there's so many people out there that are like dependent on this. And so we had to have this moment where it was like, okay, well, how do we look at ourselves and how do we value our efforts and energy and our time? And I know this is a common theme for so many teachers. It's sort of like, how do you value what you do? And it's really tricky, right? I mean, the topic of price and money, it's so taboo often. And so we as a company had to kind of break through that and say, we're going to do this. And we tried to notify everyone and, we were like, oh, we're super apologetic, and people were like, what are you talking about? You were like way too cheap to begin with anyways. So it was a moment of, kind of like, oh, right. And again, like Eddie said, having that moment of connection with the teachers of being like, oh, I can feel helpless if I don't have the support I need. It was a similar moment where it was like, wait a minute, I know this feeling as a teacher. It's like, I need to stop and pause for a moment. And we were having it as a company. So that was a moment. And we didn't know if we were going to make it with that transition. So, and we're still here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that story. I also remember looking at the original price of OfferingTree and like even I think I expressed it saying, I don't know if yoga teachers are going to understand the value of this because the price is so low. It almost feels like it's not doing all of the things that it's doing just because the price was so low, which is really an interesting way that the mind works. And it's still, in terms of what I know, and I know a lot of softwares for studios, it's still the lowest price for what it does, the most comparative price. So I really appreciate that you were taking care of teachers and that you felt the struggle of like, oh gosh, we're going to increase our rates. Is everyone going to be okay? Teachers feel that all the time. This is one other thing that I wanted to, you touched on, you had a big vision. I'm wondering, the vision that you had the very beginning, and Alex, we'll start with you because you had this idea. How did it first start out? And did you imagine that you'd be where you are now? Like OfferingTree has so many components now. It's almost hard to describe all of the things that it offers to yoga teachers in a quick sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had the vision of really trying to be in some version early on of being a kind of one-stop place. And what we didn't anticipate is that, of course, the idea and the vision, when it actually meets reality, there's that gap. And that gap then informs so much of what happens next. In our earliest iteration, actually, we had also envisioned this. It wasn't just providing, the tools and everything for teachers, but we also had this vision of like an aggregation site that was going to like aggregate all this information and then put it out there so students could come to this one place and they could find everything. And, even talking about like insurance and talking about like benefits, like healthcare. I mean, we dreamed big. We had these big, like, because I knew as a teacher, I was like, yeah, it's so hard to get decent rates on health insurance. It's so difficult to have, insurance. We even had this idea of like we could automatically save for teachers, where it was like every transaction that comes in, maybe like 10 cents, you could opt to automatically go to your own, savings account for your retirement. And so, I mean, we just pie in the sky. And I still hold that. I mean, I love that vision of being able to like solve these larger systemic issues. And then, of course, reality, which was like, okay, one foot in front of the other. Like, there's the mountaintop. We can see it, but we got to, make these small steps. And I would say one thing where reality intervened in a major way for us was, in the beginning of the pandemic, because we immediately saw this huge need to get teachers online and why that was important for just mental health and well-being all across the world. And so much kudos to Eddie and Arvin and Alec, because I wasn't so involved in this, but they worked so hard to code. I mean, they were coding their butts off to get this stuff, these new features launched and to get them out there and to get them into people's hands. And that was amazing. That was a moment where it was responsive to the reality of what was needed.
That's amazing. And I remember really bugging Eddie and saying, like, when is Zoom integration ready? I'm so sorry. I feel kind of bad at this moment. But tell us, Eddie, what do you think when you had this first vision and how has it changed now with the reality of what's happening?
Yeah, I think a lot of the same sentiments that Alex mentioned. I think one more thing that we were thinking originally was being like, have a bunch of physical space that then teachers could rent out and use. And we saw that too. So we had all these grand ideas when we first started. And it was kind of like one of those projects where if you knew how hard it was going to be at the onset, you probably wouldn't have done it. It was a little bit like that. So we had to sort of rein it in a little bit. And we still have to do that today. You want to do everything and you know that you can only be successful doing a portion of that. So it's always a struggle. But I would say the pandemic was one of the biggest things that really shifted everything. And I think Alex was alluding to this, but nobody saw that coming. And that really kind of changed the way that all the things that we started working on were like, okay, how can we make this easier for teachers to teach remotely and still provide that as close to the same experience as possible? Because I think teachers did an amazing job adapting, before even we were able to. They just figured it out on the go. And so that was pretty incredible to see the community adjust that fast, because people really had a need to still do the things that they did, yoga and Pilates and everything else, fitness. So it was really cool to see them adapt first. And then we kind of caught up and we're able to get some things done to make their lives a lot easier. And eventually we got the Zoom integration. So that was great. And yeah, I think now just building on more of the things that we had been working on to just make things easier post-pandemic, it really kind of kicked us off on a different path. And that, I think, is, to me, what stands out is how we've sort of changed and how our initial vision is different from where we're thinking now. And the pandemic has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, well, I know I really appreciate that you're really listening to yoga teachers and then you're responsive in terms of, like, yes, you can't grant every single wish from every yoga teacher all at once, but you have a way of really listening and seeing, okay, what are people wanting next? Connected Yoga Teachers. I'm popping in here for just a moment to ask you a question. Are you teaching online yoga? Now, I am a big fan of online yoga because it can make classes, courses, trainings, and workshops more accessible. It makes it so that your yoga business is no longer limited by geography, which can mean a big difference in how you can grow your yoga business. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to share OfferingTree with you here on the podcast. That's why I'm excited that we get to have this interview today with Eddie and Alex. And if you're not sure what OfferingTree is, it's an online software and website builder that makes it so easy to teach online. Make sure you check it out if you're struggling at all, because OfferingTree automatically integrates with Zoom. No more copying and pasting links. Oh my gosh, I really dislike doing that. I've had to do that for many, many calls, classes, workshops, trainings, and I love it that OfferingTree just takes care of that. And also time zones. That's the other big pain when you are working online. What's really cool is when you post your schedule to OfferingTree, it automatically figures out the time zones. So when people come to your website, it's in their time zone. So if you've been looking for a simpler and easier way to teach yoga online, try OfferingTree. Make sure to use my link, offeringtree.com/Shannon, and that will get you 50% off for the first 3 months. Okay, let's get back to our conversation with Eddie and Alex. I made a list, thanks to your website, which I feel like it must be updated, of like the things that OfferingTree gives to yoga teachers so they can have their website, they can teach live classes on there, on-demand classes, memberships, and on-demand, I just want to say like from trainings, workshops, courses, classes, everything, email, payments, client management, analytics, and you also have a Facebook group and an educational component. Alex, do you want to talk about the educational component, what that looks like, and why it's there?
Yeah, the educational component, I've been a real strong advocate of. Everyone on the team supports it, but I think I was the one that was sort of like, I'm going to carry this flag because I knew as a teacher that it's so important. Education is a way that you continue to grow and you continue to reflect as a teacher. And the way that we try to do a lot of the education is in that co-creating mode. So, if you've ever attended an OfferingTree webinar, you'll notice that the chat is very active. And that's the way we like it, because it is this idea of we're in the space of learning together, co-creating together, we're reflecting together, and that has a certain power to it. And that means that there's all kinds of potential that can emerge from that. And it's also part of our core mission as a company. So we opted to, set ourselves up as a benefit corporation, which meant that we needed to have a net kind of positive impact on society. That's what we have to do. And we have to report on that every year. And part of that was making sure that we were increasing access and education around wellness. And so that was at the heart of the organizing of the company. And I just think it's so critical because, I just think of, even if we take the pandemic, I know we keep going back to that, but think about how much we had to learn and discuss quickly in the midst of that. And without some forum to do that, again, it feels like the weight of the world is just on your shoulders and you're by yourself. So that's part of the core components of it. So we have, webinars, we have blogs that we constantly are publishing with new resources and content. And we're always trying to find ways to really create that forum for learning and growth.
Well, I really appreciate it. I would encourage all of our listeners, get on the email list because the webinars are free if you attend live, and you can grab the replay. And then for anyone who uses OfferingTree, then there's a library to refer back to as well. But anyone can benefit from those. I love to see the topics that you're covering. I think they're really great. Eddie, if you could wave a magic wand, which I know you can't do when you're working on the tech side of things, what is coming up for OfferingTree? What are some of the features that we might see, or what do you wish could be just like wave the wand and it's there?
Yeah, great question. And by the way, we need to get you on our webinar series again. So what we're working on now is better email marketing tools. So we're going to be launching in the next 7 days the ability to tag contacts and send emails based on tags. And that should make it a little bit easier to stay organized. And you can create custom tags and things like that. We're also working on some features to help studios manage their staff and multiple teachers a little bit better. We're working on that now, and we're hoping that within the first few months of the year here, we can start releasing some of those features. If I could wave a magic wand, I suppose I would duplicate myself like 10 times so we can get things done faster.
You haven't figured that out yet.
Because we have a whole list of things that we want to do. But yeah, I think the focus is going to be we're going to be making some improvements to our online store. And so then that's a place where you can sell, like you mentioned, on-demand videos, courses, challenges. We're going to be making a few improvements there. And we're making some more improvements to what we call client resource management. So you can create notes for clients or students. You'll be able to add tags and just a few other things there to make you feel a little bit more organized as a teacher or a studio owner. I would say for the most part, that's the focus.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I've seen a lot coming. Like the whole page builder thing is already released, and that's where yoga teachers can customize their website pages. I also really appreciate that you just said, like, my wave the magic wand is more of it's like wishing for more wishes. That's good.
Yeah, we have a lot of good things coming. It just takes a little bit of time to get them done and get them done right. So, and the web page builder, yeah, we were happy to release that. And I think we're going to be continuing to build on that as well, creating more pre-configured templates so people can get kind of started faster. And back to the education, creating more educational content just to help people get started and get up to speed quicker is going to be a focus as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm really excited about this year and to see how this supports yoga teachers. And I would encourage our listeners as well, if you're listening to this, go over to our show notes page and you'll find where you can leave comments. And you're more than welcome to leave comments on what would be like the coolest feature that you would like to see on anything, or reach out to the team at OfferingTree. What is the best way to reach out to the team at OfferingTree? Alex, do you want to share how can we be heard as an individual yoga teacher if we have a wish list of, this is something I need for my studio or my business?
Yeah, multiple forums of engagement. So I'd say, you can go to the website. There is a little chat feature, I can't remember what the submission button says. Eddie can correct me here in a minute. You can submit that way. You can also email us. I mean, we're not shy about saying you can get us at support@offeringtree.com. That's another direct route. And then through Facebook, or, if you prefer to engage, social media, or just respond to one of our emails. Honestly, we get a lot of responses to some of the emails that go out. So if you sign up on our news list, you'll get communications from us. And if you hit reply, we do read those and we respond to those. So any of those ways, it's sort of whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I would say the easiest is probably just email us at support@offeringtree.com.
That's amazing. Thank you both so much for all of your work. I also wanted to ask kind of one wrap-up question. What do you think, after working with many, like hundreds upon thousands of yoga teachers and studios, what do you think you've learned from that? Or maybe is there a message that you hear over and over again that's maybe surprising or inspiring? Alex, do you want to share first?
I'll take it a slightly different direction, then come back around. So forgive me, indulge me for a moment. One of the things that has surprised me and delighted me is the experience of having a user try us out and say, I'm not so sure about this. Go somewhere else. And then come back and say, you're not mad at me? It's like, no, the light's always on. You're welcome to come back whenever you want. We no hard feelings. Like we've had users do that. And to me, that's an aspect of again, this relational field. And it always sort of, it just makes me smile when we'll get those emails like, really? It's okay that I left? It's like, yeah, you're welcome to, we're not going to hold any grudges or anything like that. And then I would say on a more practical level, I think what we've seen, at least what I've seen over and over again, is just how resilient studios and teachers are. And there's been so much in the past, we're going on almost more than 2 years at this point, that has just been coming at studios and yoga teachers, and just the creativity and resilience in so many different ways, whether it's changing offerings or coming up with new collaborations or just ways of teaching. And that's always so inspiring. And then it's just to know that that's having impacts, that, each one of those teachers or studios is then impacting so many other lives, and that sort of ripples out. And that's always inspiring, even for those days where it's really, really tough and we're, working on a thorny issue at OfferingTree. It's like, you know what? A lot of people are being impacted directly by this. And we see that because we have a little dashboard internally where we see all these numbers, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at how many people registered this last month. Huge.
That's really amazing. I love that you can see that ripple in actual numbers of students benefiting from that. Thank you for sharing that. Eddie, what about you?
I would say on the customer support side, I was very pleasantly surprised at how amazing all of our users are. I think I think software developers, when they think of customer service, they're just thinking of like cable customer support, where you call in and you just get a lot of people very angry, and it's just this horrible conversation and exchange. And I remember sort of dreading how that was going to be, but it's actually been a great experience. It's been so rewarding to talk with our users and really collaborate. I mean, they're so collaborative and willing to really dive in and not be angry if something's not there, and be willing to help out and share more of what they want. Like I said earlier in the episode, our users have really pointed us in the right direction, and that takes some patience, right? Because it's not there yet. And I just think how great everyone has been. I'm just thinking it must be the wellness community. It must be just like really extra great people. So I think that's been one of the things that surprised me the most about this whole journey.
And if I could for a moment, I just want to pause and say what Eddie just said for me is so inspiring, because that was the CEO of OfferingTree saying that, that he is actually on support, reading support emails and responding. So the whole founding team of the company is actually, we're plugged into the support requests. That's probably where we're the most plugged in as a founding team. And again, I really think for me, why, again, I find that so inspiring is because it's that relational aspect. It's not like, you're 3 layers removed. It's like, no, it's the founding team is right there at the support at offeringtree.com. And that's been true since the beginning of the company. And, as we grow and all of that, we'll have additional people that are there, but we're still plugged in. We care about that area greatly. So Eddie's modest often. So I just wanted to just highlight that. And I'll go out and say that, he doesn't need to say that, but I just think that's a remarkable thing.
It is a remarkable thing, and it really shows. Hey, Connected Yoga Teachers, I'm popping in here for a moment because Allison and I were just chatting, Allison of Yoga Teacher Conf, and she said something, and I want her to repeat it.
So I've been talking to a lot of yoga teachers who are feeling really behind in their business. They should have been online earlier. And I just want to tell you, you're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. What you need to do is probably stop following these teachers who are way ahead of you, like Yoga with Adrienne. She's been doing this for 10 years. So you're not behind at all. You're perfect where you are. Come and connect with some other teachers who are right on your level at the Yoga Teacher Conf. You're going to meet so many people who are going to empower and support you, and they are you. You will feel so supported by all of them, and you won't feel behind anymore.
Tell us, how can we sign up for the Yoga Teacher Conf? Allison, I'm so excited because I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. Oh my gosh, so many of our listeners will be there. How do we sign up?
Yeah, so go to yogateacherconf.com. The conference is in person in Denver, April 22nd through the 24th. I would love to see you there participating in all of our workshops and events.
Okay, let's get back to our conversation with Eddie and Alex.
One challenge is going to be, as we grow, making sure that customer support stays as good. And we have added a really great customer support team member, and we're pretty grateful to have her. I think she's doing a great job. So you might hear from her a bit more often now, but we still read all of the messages because we want to have our sort of finger on the pulse, as you say, of what people are wanting. And we still view that as a very important sort of North Star for where we go.
That's super important. Who else works at OfferingTree? Do you want to give a shout out to the people of the team of OfferingTree? Who would like to do that?
Sure, I can do that. So we have Camille working on partnerships. I know you've been talking with her, Shannon. She's doing an awesome job. We have Sinead helping us with email and social media. And she's just kind of like a glue person who just kind of fills all the roles. She's amazing. And then we have a few developers that are helping us out, Io and Rebecca, and they're terrific. And then a couple of the other founders that aren't on the call are Arpin and Alex, and they're both, he's the smartest guy in the room when it comes to tech. So you said it was me, Shannon, but I have to say I have to tip my hat to Arpin. He's the master. And then Alex is also really good on the technical side, and he's a flex person. He has an MBA, so he works on some of the marketing for us as well. So he's a good person to have. And I don't know, am I forgetting anybody, Alex?
Yeah, well, the customer support person we brought on.
Oh yeah, Lucci, yeah.
Yeah, so Lucci, who joined us, who is amazing. And yeah, it's been phenomenal to watch Lucci as she's just working through. And really, we were nervous about bringing somebody on, in that role. And Lucci has just knocked it out of the park and has been incredible. So just a real big shout out and thanks.
That's great. Thank you to all of the team members. I've met a bunch of them. So that's exciting. And it's been so great to talk with both of you. Thank you for the work that you're doing to support yoga teachers and studios. I think it's also so key, and I feel it when I talk with both of you, that you're very much connected to helping, being part of community, enabling community, social justice as well. That's come through over and over again as I've worked with you. I'm just so excited to see where this is going to go, fueled by yoga teachers and studios saying, hey, this is what we need next. It's just really exciting. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Maybe someday we can add your brother to our team.
I've been pushing for that. Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm going to send this to Conrad and tell him.
And thanks for everything that you're doing, again, because as the theme that we'll share over and over again, as much as we can, it's relational, it's relational, it's relational. So we've benefited so much from our partnership and just collaboration with you. And so we're so grateful, because we all succeed when we all succeed. And so, yeah.
This is great. If our yoga teachers are looking for software to support their business, I highly recommend that they check out OfferingTree, and we'll make sure that we also link to a discount for them for our Connected Yoga Teacher listeners. And I also want to say thank you for sponsoring the podcast, because it takes a lot behind the scenes to make a podcast happen. And it's really exciting that that's where we're at now, that OfferingTree is a sponsor. So thank you.
Yeah, we're super happy to be supporting the podcast, and it's offeringtree.com/Shannon to get the discount. So yeah, thank you so much, Shannon, for having us on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much again, Alex and Eddie, for taking the time to answer my questions here on the podcast, for really allowing our listeners to get to know you a little bit better as people running a small business. Thank you also for all of the time and energy that you have put into forming connections, supporting yoga teachers, supporting yoga students. It's really phenomenal how you've grown your company and created something that I think has amazing growth potential ahead of it as well. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you also to our entire team over here working behind the scenes to bring this podcast to you and to support you in our Facebook group and our articles on our website, all the things that they do behind the scenes. They really hold things together for our Connected Yoga Teacher community. And speaking of community, thank you so much for being here. You are part of the community. Without you as a listener, this podcast isn't even possible. And I'm just honored that I get to do this work of asking questions, putting podcasts together for you. And if there's ever a topic or something that you want us to cover, let us know. you can head over to theconnectedyogateacher.com. On our homepage is a button there. You can leave us a voice message, or down near the bottom, you can leave us an email. We love to hear from you. You really are the fuel for this podcast. Alrighty. As we get ready to close out this month together, if you're listening in real time, I would like to ask you, what will you be doing to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?